Hello and welcome to the second day of the new term of Politics at Jack and Sam's, the podcast that pops up at 7:30 every morning to give you everything you need to know about the day ahead in British politics in under 20 minutes.
Hello there, it's Tuesday, September the 3rd, the day after Sam and I, like the entire British cabinet, forgot to wish Keir Starmer a happy birthday. So much for everything you need to know about the day ahead in British politics, Sam. Total fail on day one there.
So we're not perfect. We'll try and do better today. What we do is try to help you unpick and decode and understand and explain what politicians are going to do in the hours to come and why they're doing it, because it isn't always obvious even to us, at this critical juncture in our politics, where one member of the government basically was telling me last night that they think they've got about 8 weeks to sort out 4 years of plans. Buckle up, everybody.
8 weeks away, of course, is the budget. Before we get into it, Sam, we spent all that time yesterday teeing everyone up for the day ahead in British politics. The only thing anyone wanted to talk to me about afterwards was your cat. Can I just check before we get started, where is Bob the cat? Is he locked away in a cage somewhere, or is he about to launch some sort of violent attack on someone in the next few minutes?
He's sleeping upstairs and the door is shut, so hopefully he won't interrupt us today. It kind of was Cat Day in British politics. Bob, who you might have seen fleetingly as I took him out of the room, is a Siberian cat. That's the breed of cat that Keir Starmer announced on the BBC yesterday that he had bought as a kitten. Which matters only so much in that the thing about Siberians is that they love you very, very intently. So get ready, Keir Starmer, for that new cat might love you like you'd never imagine.
Hang on. There are two things to know about Bob. One is that, yes, he's a very friendly cat. I've been round to Sam's house when we used to record the podcast in each other's houses rather than on a Zoom call, and Bob would never leave you alone. But the other thing you need to know about Bob and all Siberian cats, I assume, is they are enormous. Bob is not so much a cat as a tiger. He is a vast beast, which means that the cat he was fighting with yesterday must be the bravest cat in London.
That wouldn't have happened in number 10, of course, because they can't get a cat flap in the door because it's bomb-proof that leads out of the Downing Street flat. However, I'm told there is a way for the existing Starmer cat to get out, and hopefully this one, which is they prop open the window and there's a little series of ladders down the back that the cat is meant to use to get out. But the problem is that the existing cat is refusing to use it. So there we go. Cat trivia in spades. We ought to move on.
We're going to talk about three different things today. On top of the list, Sam, is Israel. That big announcement in the House of Commons on Monday afternoon from David Lammy that Britain was suspending some, but not all, of its arms exports to Israel has created shockwaves. It's leading lots of front pages today, as you'd expect. The fallout will continue, and we'll get into that. We need to talk about what's happening in Parliament today because it's another busy day. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is taking her first Treasury Questions this morning, so that will be a big moment given, as we said before, the budget's only, a couple of months away. And of course, we have to talk about the Tories. The first leadership hustings is happening in Parliament this afternoon. So all the remaining Tory MPs who didn't lose their seats will be gathering to watch the 6 leadership contenders duke it out. Let's kick off with Israel, though, Sam, because, I mean, that is just a massive story. We talked about the fact that David Lammy was going to be making a statement in the Commons yesterday. You talked about the fact this decision was looming. We didn't know he was going to do it there and then. What did you make of it?
Well, this was the decision to suspend 30 of the 350 arms export licenses that currently Britain has with Israel. Now, it's a tiny amount of Israel's total arms purchases, 0.02%, but the politics of this is massive. And the backlash this morning from communities and from bits of society that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer in particular has worked very hard to try and bring back on side after allegations of anti-Semitism during the Jeremy Corbyn years has been swift, and it has been pretty brutal in parts. You've got the chief rabbi, Sir Efrain Mervis, writing that the decision beggars belief. You've got the president of the British Board of Deputies, Phil Rosenberg, saying that he's got deep concern and he's seeing Israel being castigated in the way that enemies, including Hamas, are not. I think I have just a sense that they'll be caught on the hop a little bit in Downing Street by the ferocity of the response to all of this. They, I think, point to public opinion that is, quite firmly in favour of an arms embargo, but it's the response of those bits of the community that they tried so hard to build bridges with that will not be comfortable this morning.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And of course, there's also a big diplomatic fallout from this. Lots of angry comments from senior Israeli ministers overnight, which perhaps not surprising, but still a big moment to see some of the things they're saying. And Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz describing a series of recent decisions since Starmer took power. So, making it about a much bigger thing, a shift in direction they're suggesting from the UK. And I think the thing I'll be watching out for today, Sam, is American reaction. America was on public holiday yesterday, which means most journalists have their phones off, most politicians have their phones off. We haven't seen a lot of US reaction to this yet. I suspect that will come when America wakes up and gets back to work today, and it will be very interesting to see this, just how this goes down over there. Obviously, it puts sort of pressure on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden in a way. I don't think they're going to be delighted to have seen Keir Starmer do this, and whether anyone wants to, bring this into the US election debate at this juncture remains to be seen. But I think that will definitely be how it might develop as the day goes on.
I was fascinated by the Tory response. The very initial impulse of Shadow Foreign Secretary Andrew Mitchell, who's actually been quite a critic of Israel over the years, was simply to say, look, we'll look at this. He was given a bit of advance notice, and he said, we'll look carefully at this plan. And that was at 4:30. By 7 o'clock, he was saying that he thought this plan will fail, both to satisfy Labour's backbenchers and offending Israel. And basically what I think happened was that there was a chorus of criticism from the Tory leadership candidates, not least Robert Jenrick, who called it shameful. Oliver Dowden, the former Deputy Prime Minister, called it, saying he was very concerned. I think this is going to become a dividing line in British politics as well quite quickly, and that's another reason that is going to feed into today. And
in a sense, Andrew Mitchell is right. I mean, we already saw comments from the Labour left saying this doesn't go anywhere near far enough for what they would like to see. As you said, this is only a small number of the arms exports that Britain sends to Israel. We saw a statement from the Labour Muslim Network saying that all arms exports should be banned immediately. So it has not satisfied people who are pressing for action on the left, and has clearly upset Israel and, as you say, lots of the Jewish groups as well. So it's a tricky situation for Keir Starmer. I guess the only thing you would say, though, in Downing Street's defence is whatever they did or indeed didn't do on this issue was going to create a stir. Like, inaction is also a decision. And they've been under immense pressure in opposition, as we've talked about endlessly on this podcast, about their own position on this. What would they do if they got into power? They stalled, and they've obviously settled on, the classic sort of New Labour third way, which can sort of just about triangulate everyone, or it can just end up upsetting everybody in the equation. And so far, that's where we are this morning.
Shall we move on to the day in Parliament? The big thing in terms of legislation today is the bill. It's actually called the Passenger Railway Services Public Ownership Bill. This is the bill that helps the government get at speed the remaining franchises, the rail network in England, back into public ownership. That's basically being railroaded, speeding through the Commons. The Tories can vote against it all they like, and they will, but not only is it going to go through, but it's going to go through, and it will be, I think, the first piece of legislation to get through all of its common stages of anything that this government does.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting choice that they've made to prioritise this above all else. It's a bit of a statement. As you say, we sort of knew they were going to do it, and they've obviously got this overwhelming majority. It's obviously going to go through today, and this will become law. And within 3 years, all of those different passenger lines will be back in public ownership. I was just trying to think, when is the last time a government actually nationalise something of its own free will? We've seen sort of these sort of sporadic nationalisations of things, or temporary nationalisations of things in this country when something's gone disastrously wrong. Some of these rail lines have been temporarily taken into public ownership. We obviously saw it with the banks in 2008. But for a British government to say, no, like private ownership has failed, we want to permanently bring these back into public hands, feels like a long time since we've seen something like that. And it's a bit of a statement from Keir Starmer, I think. But again, I mean, as with the Israeli arms embargo, this is overwhelmingly popular with the public, even far more popular than that with the public. Something like 70% of the public support public ownership of the railways. So they feel on pretty solid ground with this, but it's a very long-term project. You know, people are not going to see big changes overnight. Even when these rail lines are all back in public ownership by 2028 or whenever it is, they're still not going to see like radically changed network, but they are going to think the government is now in control. So it's going to have to come with a bit of a plan to improve things, I think, if they're going to win people round, and they're not going to end up, disheartening people who want to see the rail network improved and find that this hasn't solved it.
The two rail franchises that are coming up for renewal most quickly are the Great Anglia Line and West Midlands Trains. Those contracts are actually both due up and expired this month, so it'll be interesting to see what happens to those. You're right about public ownership. It's interesting just how much this new government is very, very happy to rely on the power of the state to interfere in the market in one way or another. On the front page of the Times, we've had this debate about dynamic pricing in the light of the Oasis tickets fiasco. We've actually there got Bridget Phillipson talking about another area the government might step in and interfere with the market. She wants to stop airlines raising prices during school holidays, partly to stop parents taking kids out of school in term time. Just everywhere you look, there is an impulse to have a fiddle, and how that works, how that plays out, whether that is compatible ultimately with the government's growth mission, which is the heart of what Rachel Reeves does, is going to be fascinating to see.
Which takes us neatly on to the other big moment in Parliament's day, which is Rachel Reeves' first monthly Treasury Questions session as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Of course, she's been taking part in these question sessions for ages as the Shadow Chancellor, but now we see, much like we saw with PMQs just before the summer break, a role reversal where she is the one at the dispatch box and Jeremy Hunt has to sort of slump up from the opposition benches and interrogate her. And I think all of Westminster will be watching this today, not just to see that shift in dynamic, which tells you everything about the power shift that's happened in this country over the past few months, but also for clues and hints about what is to come in what is clearly the big political moment of the autumn, which is the budget on October the 30th. What's interesting about today, Sam, is that Rachel Reeves is facing an opposite number, Jeremy Hunt, who knows everything about the Treasury, everything about what's in the books, everything about what her officials will be telling her, because obviously he's been in there for years working with those very same people. So he will be coming from a position of strength in terms of the questions he can ask, and he is obviously very upset with the way Rachel Reeves has been framing the state of the public finances, and I'm sure he will want to have his say today.
Well, you better get used to it, because Labour is not going to give up the charge that the last government left behind, the £22 billion black hole. And that's going to be the argument basically at the foundation of the October 30th budget. I've been having a few conversations about what that could look like. And nobody resiles from the fact that it's going to be incredibly difficult. One of the things I'm told is that the overall black hole could be bigger than 22 billion, because don't forget, 22 billion is just the gap in this financial year alone, 24-25, and they haven't even had the numbers from the OBR for basically the sort of forecast for the coming years. So they could have to fill an even bigger sum, and these are massive amounts of money. For context, when George Osborne and David Cameron embarked on austerity in 2010, they wanted 40 billion of savings over 5 years. And that's back in 2010 prices. This is a remaining 17 billion in 1 year alone. And so that gives you a sense of the scale. And because it has to be done so quickly, because the black hole is in this year, which is quite unique as far as I can tell at any recent point in my political journalism lifetime, that actually constrains how they can do it. There are like 4 ways you can fill a black hole: by tax, by welfare, by cutting Whitehall day-to-day spending, and then by scrapping projects. And I'm told that to fill an immediate in-year black hole, you can't really use tax at all because it takes too long to set it up. So there will be tax rises, but but they can't really use that to solve this problem. And welfare decisions are the same. Really, you have to look to Whitehall spending, and most of all, the Treasury want to scrap projects to fill this black hole. That, for accounting reasons as much as anything else, will be what the Treasury is pressuring cabinet ministers to look for. What can I scrap? So those front pages about MOD contracts, questions about rail and road projects, all of that will come under the most pressure in this process, because that's where they think that they can get the money from.
And of course, governments making very quick decisions on these projects they don't really understand have a tendency sometimes to get them horribly wrong. And so you may see very poor, controversial decisions being made in that budget where, you think you can get away with just scrapping that little thing that no one cares about. And then, of course, the budget blows up in your face and these stories take a life of their own and you lose control of the narrative. And that's what Rachel Reeves and Downing Street will no doubt be worried about with the budget looming. We better talk about the Tories, Sam, before we finish, because there's an interesting moment in the Tory leadership contest today at 4:00. All 6 of the candidates to be Tory leader will get together in committee corridor in Westminster for a hustings event where they will take it in turns to basically make their pitch to MPs to be leader. It's going to go on for a couple of hours. There will be many journalists outside the door with ears pressed to the door trying to figure out who's doing well and who's not, and who's upset someone and who hasn't, and are they going to be rude about each other, which is obviously the thing that we find most entertaining in a slightly childish way. But it's a big moment given that tomorrow, Wednesday, we will have the first vote and the first elimination, and everyone's expecting Mel Stride to drop out tomorrow, but that remains to be seen.
But what we are getting is a sense of the dividing lines in this campaign. So Robert Jenrick, for instance, wants to leave the ECHR. Kemi Badenoch and James Cleverly are against. Tom Tugan has suggested in the past they could be a time. Let's see whether at 10:30 when he launches his campaign, he does that. But really, Jack, for all the public events, as you say, it's the behind closed doors bit that matters at the moment. And so I think we've got a few more rounds of this voting, as we were saying yesterday. Until that point, it's all backroom deals and shenanigans, and the public bit is just a little bit of show that I'm not sure matters that much. The most striking thing was William Hague in the Times. He was telling them all not to do exactly what they're doing. He was saying, don't make policy too early, like promising to leave the ECHR. Don't focus on internal politics, like Priti Patel's been doing with an overhaul of the party and elected party chairman. Don't defend the Tory record too comprehensively, and don't move to the right. So William Hague giving them some advice. They might say, well, look at what William Hague achieved in 2001 when he was Tory leader. But nevertheless, I think some, particularly veterans of the Cameron years, might think that wise advice.
And just very quickly on the Tories before we finish, really interesting little scoop in our Playbook email this morning, Sam, that Paul Marshall, the hedge fund tycoon, should complete his purchase of The Spectator this week, we think. Assuming that's correct, makes him a real power player in all of this. Of course, he's the guy behind GB News, he's the guy behind the Unheard comment website, and he becomes more and more of a player in Tory circles just in the middle of a Tory leadership campaign. I just think he's a really fascinating figure, and one that you and I, I'm sure, will be talking more and more about over the months ahead as we pick over the runes of the Tory party in whatever direction they decide to go after this leadership contest.
The Spectator's done a brilliant job becoming a powerhouse reporting British politics, so we will look out for what happens to all the figures that work there. Interestingly, Paul Marshall's bid for the Telegraph has gone quite quiet. Some speculation that that's no longer his focus. The Spectator in Old Queen Street, Unheard, which Paul Marshall also owns, also in Old Queen Street. So uniting of some very grand buildings round the back of Westminster. But no, that's quite a big shift, and over time will have a big impact on Tory politics, I'm sure.
All right, that'll do us nicely. Have a wonderful day, everyone. We will look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning for more political chat. Thanks, Sam.
Cheers, Jack.